Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Inklings. I'm so excited to be here. Just getting all my stuff that we're going to need. And, oh, I just remembered I forgot my scriptures. So that's going to make things a little complicated. If we need them, I'll go get them. And we've got a couple friends coming today. We're doing Sister Browning's talk. So you're going to want Sister Browning's talk for sure. And then maybe the New Testament, maybe the Book of Mormon is where we're going to go. And, okay. Lisa is going to hop on today, our cute Lisa Richards. And we're also having, well, good, you made it.
Made it.
I'm just waiting for, let me see if I can invite her. Whoops. Let's see. You always have to be a little smarter than me right at this beginning moment. It takes a little second. Okay, let me try this. Let's see if that works. Okay, and everyone, sweatshirts, if you ordered a sweatshirt, they're being printed right now. Hi, Emily.
Hi, guys.
And then shipping out in the next 2 weeks is what is going to happen. So I was just telling everybody, we're going to be in Sister Browning's talk. We're going to be in Alma for a second. And then there were so many good things in this talk. I'm wondering for how many people was this like a favorite conference talk? Because I've talked to so many people who Sister Browning was like a favorite of the conference talks. So that makes it so fun to talk about. And before we dive in, I just want to say this. I had out my Inklings manual today. So 2 things that might be important. First of all, I told you this earlier, but we got a couple comments 2 weeks ago, I think, and it's going to happen again. At the very last minute, you guys, in the middle of the night, I felt super prompted to switch 2 of our conference talks. And Rio had just had a brand spanking new baby. Does anyone remember that happening? So I debated texting Rio to tell her I was making the change. And then I thought, she already has her hands so full. So there are going to be 2 places where the Work and Wonder schedule do not actually match the Inklings schedule. That is my fault because I was in the middle of the night making changes. But if you're listening at 9 o'clock on Thursday mornings, you want to make sure you're checking the Inklings workbook to make sure you're on the right talk. So hopefully you printed out the Work and Wonder conference schedule, or you're using the Deseret Book conference talks, conference talks, the Wide Margin conference talks, or the Deseret Book ones. But then you're going to want to follow this schedule. The one that looks like this is for Real Life True, where we're going to be. So that maybe will help you. Okay, my mom's doing super good, everyone. She's still doing physical therapy and occupational therapy, and she's just working on little things that she wants to get back. The only thing she cares if she does is, in our family, she does the 24-day Christmas. It's like the highlight of her entire year, not just December. And so we all met together and talked about how we could help simplify her life. And she said we could cancel anything in the world we wanted, but not the 24 days of Christmas. So my mom is just at home doing the 24 days of Christmas, everyone. We've canceled everything else off her calendar except the 24 days of Christmas. So that is what is happening over there. And good news on Garrett. He took his first step yesterday. So 25% weight bearing yesterday, and he's like 3 weeks ahead of schedule, and we're so happy. The whole family text was so happy yesterday. So lots of hard things, but also we are counting our blessings. I don't know if anyone else is doing that right now, but November for us is going to be counting the good in the middle of the hard. That's what we're doing. Okay, so I think that's all the housekeeping. You've met Lisa and Emily before, but let's just do a quick introduction again so everybody remembers who you are. So Lisa, tell us a little bit about you first, and then Emily, you tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Richards. This is a privilege. Married 22 years today, have 4 kids, live in Orem, and I professionally, I'm skin boss. I have a spa skincare company and do a lot in that world. And Emily Snyder is my idol.
And I love Lisa for that because you guys know I get melanoma regularly. So Lisa is like the coach of keeping my skin healthy in my life, but also brilliantly spiritual at the same time. So we love having her on. And then Emily, what do you want to tell us about you this week?
That I'm just a fangirl of you both. Like the day I got to hang out with the two of you, I texted Lisa and was like, if this is what we do to hang out with our favorite people, like, all right, I'll read conference docs so I can hang out with my people. I get to do business strategy and operations for a couple different companies and currently working for the church. And just, I really love collecting people and experiences. So this is like pinch myself moments when I get to hang out with amazing people like you guys.
It's so fun. Okay. I love that someone's thinking about their lemon water right now because this is truly what is one of my favorite parts about Inklings. When I try and tell people about us, it is the funniest conversation. Someone the other day was like, I think you might have created a spiritual sorority. And I was like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. So if you're new around here, last semester, for some reason, we talked about drinking lemon water early in the morning, just because it like purifies your whole entire body. And so this is what you do. If you're dying to just have a clean body every single day, our cute friend Tana Fox told us, you just need to drink a glass of lemon water in the morning with half of a lemon. You just squeeze out the juice into your lemon water, drink it. It's supposed to be like miraculous. I do it every day because I trust everything Tana tells me to do. So anyone who wants to start off the day with lemon water, everyone at Inklings is doing the same thing. Okay, to join the sorority, all you have to do is just show up in this community, and then you're like in already. You're just in.
You don't even have to drink the lemon water, probably.
Yeah, you don't even have to drink the lemon water. Also, you don't even have to come to all the classes because even if you just get one, we like take you as ours. So it just, you show up one time, you're in. That's what happens. That people just die laughing over this. The lemon water, the sprinkles, they're so intrigued by the sprinkles, and that we have a code word. That's what everybody loves, that you just can walk up to someone and be like, Inklings, and then you immediately know what you know. It's so fun. So that is so fun. Welcome to our spiritual sorority, everybody. That's what my girls wanted to call it last week. So that's so funny. Okay, the sprinkles, if you don't know what they are, and then we are going to dive into this talk, is this theory. None of us have time to do all the things all the time. That is just the reality of life. And so when I started Inklings, I wanted a community with where the expectation was manageable, because what we don't need is one more thing to feel guilty about. But I'm also the type of person that's like, I want to dive in. I want to do the good thing. I want to like be a part of a community that is moving forward spiritually. So we started Inklings, which is a group of women who gather together on Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. If you can, to talk about Jesus. And we focus on ancient and modern prophets. But sometimes you can't join at 9 o'clock on Thursday morning. So then you can listen to the video anytime you want that week. But what if you don't have time for an hour that week? Then on Instagram or on the app, you can find 5 slides, just 5 pictures And you could either think about a word all week. You could think about a phrase all week. You could just simply do the reading or listen to the conference talk if you want to. Or on the very last slide, there's just something to ponder. Maybe that's all you have time for that week, but just like on a cupcake, if you just get the sprinkles on the top, you experience sweetness. Even if you never even ate the whole thing, you experience sweetness. And that's our theory here at Inklings. There's no catching up required. You just get whatever sprinkles you can get whenever you can get them, and God will bless those. You'll be better for it. So that's the theory of the sprinklings.
And you also have it on a podcast now, correct?
Oh, yes.
Aren't
This
they on the
is
podcast?
on a podcast. Good reminding. I forgot about that. Yes. And I have it all going and working. So you'd think I would remember, but
Well, there's just a couple things in life. So.
this is, we are on a podcast now, you guys. So you can go look wherever you listen to podcasts. And everyone was like, I want to be able to do my laundry. I want to be able to drive in my car. I want to be able to do all the things. So here's the beauty. You can do all the things now and listen to the podcast as well if you want to. So, and we put all of last semester up and this semester. So if you want a recap, everything's on the podcast. So, okay, what I thought we would do is last month, we kind of introduced the topic for this semester, which was overcoming the world. That feels like a lot to take on because the world is kind of big right now. But we did start introducing, that's what our goal is for the next 6 months, is to overcome the world. And then I went through and tried to break that into bite-sized pieces that made it feel more manageable. So for the month of November, all we have to worry about is choosing Jesus. That's what we're doing this month. We're just choosing Jesus all month long and becoming humble followers. And I love the thought of that, especially as we are like ramping up into Christmas, just to have this focus as choosing Jesus, as bringing more Jesus into our life. And that's what we're going to be talking about this entire month, is where does Jesus fit into our story? And Sister Browning is going to talk about how we see Jesus in our story. And I want to talk about two things that I'll just introduce first, and then we're going to dive right into the conference talk. I had a cute friend. I talk about her all the time, Chris Belcher. You guys probably think she's your friend too, because that's how often I talk about her. And she really is all our friends, because she would have just loved Inklings if she was still alive. But I love to think of her participating from the other side. So if you feel like you need a friend on the other side, you guys, anybody, you can just count on Chris Belcher being your guardian angel. She has that much capacity, and I'm sure she loves this group as much as we love this group. So she was 100% blind. She used to call me her guide dog. And one of my favorite stories of being the guide dog was we walked on a stage one time. She was a really great speaker. And I had her on my elbow, because you would lead her around by your elbow. And we were walking on the stage, and I was walking a little slower. And she was like super excited to get on the stage. And she stepped before I stepped and took my pants off. I had on elastic band pants. And so I started trying to grab my pants to pull them back on as we're walking on the stage. And she's like this behind me. What are you doing? What are you doing? Keep walking. Keep walking. And I'm mic'd. And I say to her, you're pulling down my pants right now. It was so funny, because you just never knew what was going to happen. But she had cancer in her eyes. And so they ended up taking her eyes out. And so she would wear glasses. And they didn't help her. She didn't have any eyes. But the man who helped with her prosthetics was like, it'll be better if you just wear glasses. So she would wear these glasses every day. She would wear these glasses. And the week after she died, I was over at James's house, her husband. And he pulled out her glass case and her glasses, and he was like, what do you think I should do with these? And he's like, my gut is just throw them in the garbage. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I actually want those. And I brought them home, and I keep them in this little box in my living room. And another dear friend of mine had a card that Chris had signed for her, that she copied off the signature for me so I could keep that in here with these glasses. But I love this thought. She had such an amazing spiritual perspective. And it was one I actually really relied on. I don't know if you have a friend like that, but at times when I just needed somebody to help me, like, put things into place spiritually, she had a gift for doing that. And part of her gift was she would just let you talk it out. And within the talking out and these questions that she was so gifted in asking, you could figure out that direction by the time you left the corner of her bed and went home. And I miss that so much. In fact, in the past 2 weeks, there have been so many moments where I'm like, oh, I just need 1 hour with Chris Belcher right now to help me navigate where I'm going. And when I went to Israel, the very first time, I went to the pool of Siloam. And do you remember? That's the pool where the Savior got dirt and he wiped it on the eyes of the blind man. And I just picked up a handful of dirt for her and for me that I put in this little thing, and I brought it home for her and set it by her bed. And I said to her, I know you have the faith to be healed. I know that about your faith. And that's what this jar reminds me of, is you had that kind of faith in you, but you also had the type of trust that said, I will follow Jesus. I will choose Jesus, even if the healing doesn't come. And it's such an interesting perspective to think about, because her capacity was the type of faith that would allow her to be healed. But her trust was more powerful than her faith. And I loved that about her. And so as we're thinking about our own perspective, and as we're thinking about seeing Jesus in our life, I kind of love that idea of, like, what is our spiritual perspective right now? And if you were going to put on glasses and try and see through a lens of trust before faith, what would we see there? And I love that Sister Browning, so I'll just kick us off. I love that she said every day when she puts on her glasses, they are a tool. There were 2 things which I loved. Like, I wanted to think about this. First, it was a tool that would help her to clarify, focus, and ground the world around her. So I loved that thought: clarify, focus, and ground the world. But the second reason was for guidance that would continually point her in the right direction. And I just loved that thought of, like, okay, what is my tool? Like, what is the thing that is helping me be grounded, find focus, but then also give me guidance that points me in the right direction? So I kind of thought it would be fun to start right there. I have a couple notes in this talk too, but maybe it'd be fun. Lisa, why don't you say one of your favorite parts, and then Emily, you say one of yours, and then I might jump back in with one of mine as we go.
Okay, so mine would be into, if it was printed out, the second page, but where she says, as covenant children of God, we have been uniquely blessed with a rich supply of divinely appointed tools to improve our spiritual vision. Okay, I love this piece because, first of all, her word choices of, she didn't just say, we've been blessed. She said, we've been uniquely blessed and with a rich supply. So those just enhance what this experience is. But then I'm looking at it like, I love that she gave, that there's like, not something tangible, but like, instead of just saying, we've been blessed. You can find it. We're like going to dive in and identify those.
Yeah.
So I love that, where it's to remember that we're covenant children, because we're talking so much about being covenant keepers, making covenants, all of these things. There's so much of a theme here. So I love that that's brought out. Uniquely blessed, a rich supply to improve our spiritual vision. Because then there's so much, I think, throughout the talk we're talking about, you know, what we have without this, or what the world is
Yeah.
it's cloudy, it's obscure, it's like, so this is truly a gift. I just love that it's a gift. And to me, it's because she says he can make plain. Now we know who he is. He can make plain the correct path that leads to our eternal destination. So what would he have us see, and where would he have us go? And there's such a personal nature to that this is a gift that, yes, as covenant children collectively, but individually, probably through prayer and other sources of revelation, maybe in the temple, it is that we will ask those questions ourselves. What do you want me to see? What do you want me to do? But that these gifts are allowing that. So I won't keep going on, but I just think in the world.
I love that part though, while you're talking about it, because I marked that in mine too, that I love that, that there's like this 2-step process. Did you notice that? That it was like, I first need you to see what's happening. I need you to see and experience it. Then I need you to do something. And I don't know if that's always my, like my process, because I am a doer by nature. And so I love that counsel of like, I first need you to see, like take a minute and just see. Then I need you to do. And it also reminded me of this. I had the opportunity last week to speak somewhere with my son, Garrett. And I think most of you know his story, but if you don't know his story, some people like to call us Utah's Blind Side story. If you've seen The Blind Side, it's a really similar story. And my son Garrett actually does play in the NFL. So it kind of starts out with a tutoring experience in high school and ends up with a boy in the NFL. And there's all sorts of stories in between. And in Utah right now, so those of you who live here are going to start hearing more about this. There is a group of people advocating for these teen centers in Utah. And it's going to be centers that do a lot what we did for Garrett in our home, that provide this safe place. And so I had the opportunity to go and speak to a group of legislatures and women and people who are trying to get this up and off the ground. And they were asking me, like, why did I step in to Garrett's story? And how did I even know what to do? And one of the thoughts that I had that I think is so important, I wrote this in my notes, is we have to learn to live with eyes wide open. That there is need all around us. Like Greg and I always wanted to go to Africa. We were going to build a well. We were going to like do something to make a difference in the world. And my Africa ended up living 5 houses down from me. And because at that time I had a really great bishop who was helping us to see what was happening, we were able to do something in that situation. And so I love the idea, and I just wrote down, I want to live my life with eyes wide open. I want to be able to see, because I think we can only do if we've learned how to see. Now, I don't know, Emily, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I'm in the chat. Arlamo is your handle. I don't know what her real name is, but she had the comment that I instantly thought too, as you were talking, both of you, of when the angel told Nephi to look, and that there's so much of the concept of, I was talking to a friend the other night about the power of visualizing and seeing ourselves in situations first to then be able to actually be in those situations. And so I love that reminder of taking the minute, inviting the Spirit to show us what we can't see with our natural eyes, and the power of the atonement allowing us to see through different eyes. which I think is so incredible, because sometimes I love the idea of having eyes wide open. I also tend to get a little overwhelmed. And so sometimes I wonder if those lenses that I'm being asked to put on, like, when you can do like the blue light glasses or the green light like, and then it like filters out a lot of this stuff. And so as you guys were sharing and just thinking of like, wow, I wonder if that is the world that these glasses can be, is there's so much stuff, as we've talked about, like so many things, so many good things too, but just so much being bombarded, and to be overwhelmed with like, wait, what is my piece? And I loved how you mentioned that, Lisa, like in prayer, in the temple, thinking about like, what would you have me see? Where am I not going to get distracted? I was with a friend the other day and talking about how much I love design. Like I love graphic design, home design, clothing, like all design just makes me happy. But I've realized that I can get caught in like the placement of things sometimes and forget what the whole point of design is to create the experience and the feel. And do I get caught in some of those things? And so can those glasses or be that filter to see what God would have us individually see? The part that stood out for me was also in that same paragraph, Lisa. I, much as you have taught, but also Elder Richard G. Scott back in the day talking about scripture study, and Brother Summerfelt at BYU taught about it, but just the idea of giving ourselves permission, and my verbiage is to be snagged on words and phrases, and just like, I don't have a time frame. I don't have to accomplish anything in my study other than allowing myself to be snagged. In that beginning sentence in that same paragraph, as covenant children of God. And in all the conversations we keep hearing about covenants, at that moment I was like, all right, what in the heck are we talking about with covenant? Like, what do we mean by covenant? And I realized that my mom, as a school teacher who then taught in our house how to do math problems, would always we had to show all of our steps in our math problems.
Yes.
And I've realized that I kind of need that in some of the language we use at church. I need to dig down a little bit deeper. Like, what exactly is your step of thinking so that I understand what you mean by covenant? So I finally, after how many years of us talking about covenants, I was like, what does that mean to me? Like, what is a covenant for me? And so that just took me on a beautiful little journey of what are the things that I, or we as a people, have been paying attention to more than perhaps the Lord would want us to then need the reclarification and the refocus. And as she goes into the stories of the children of Israel, I'm just thinking like, gosh, how many things have I thought were it, and then I've made so much bigger that then lost the sense of the design of what I'm actually trying to accomplish. Like, it's not about that chair. It's about how the chair fits into the whole picture.
Yeah.
And how often do I get so stuck on the certain key elements that have nothing to do. I mean, they have a tiny bit, but it's just a piece.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love our prophet is so right now focused on covenant. And I think about us even as Inklings, our Inklings community. If we looked back over the last 7 semesters, covenant and that temple focus have been like that grounding place for us for 7 semesters, where we've totally have leaned into what does it look like to be a covenant people? What does it look like to have covenant relationship? What is he talking about when he talks about a covenant path? That covenant word is so much a part of our vocabulary, but do we know what it is? And for me, it's less about a definition. Yeah, covenant belonging is also a word that we use. For me, it's less about a definition and more about defining higher relationship. Like the more I study it, the more I'm like, what he's describing right now, although we might define it as a promise, but when I look at it, I'm like, this is just higher relationship. That's what covenant means. It means I'm choosing to enter into a higher and holier relationship with him. And it's our choice. right? It's our choice.
Well,
And daily how we live, it's our choice.
well, and I, for me, I think in this conversation of focusing on Christ, sometimes I forget the relationship with whom, and remember, and like, it was so tender for me of like, being like, oh, this is a covenant with my Father in heaven. And the reason why there's a promise is because he has something he's so anxious to give me. He is so anxious to give me all that he hath. And this whole concept is an opportunity for me to be prepared to receive all that he hath. That's all that this conversation is about, is I am so anxious, Em, for you to be and receive all of this. But in order to do that, I need you to have eyes to see. I need your heart to be bigger than it is capable of being. I need you to be a God, and you are yet human. And so I've given you the Savior. I've given you Jesus Christ. And with him, you get to enter into this covenant. With him, you get to be qualified, and you get to have capacity and capability to be what you can't be without him, so that you get to get all that I'm so anxious to give you. And all of a sudden, for me, maybe for the first time in complete clarity, was like, that's what the Godhead is. And that the Spirit is my nudger and my constant communicator. And the like, do you feel great about that, Snyder? Like, hold up. All of a sudden, the relationships made so much sense to me as I did my conversation. And deep, like, what in the heck, Lord? Like, okay, let's powwow about this.
Yeah. And I love, someone brought up the word hesed, which is a word I've been studying so much lately, but it's a type of grace that provokes action on the ground. And I love that thought of like that reciprocal relationship of entering in like that. And I love that so many people just said the Strength of the Youth pamphlet that is taking us to higher and holier way of living. And when I was reading the whole Law of Moses part of this talk, I was like, we actually just experienced that like this month.
The talk just before hers.
Yeah. And last week, in the talk that we were just talking about, is that call to live a higher, holier law that like actually requires us to enter into relationship in order to in order to live. Like, we need the relationship in order to know how to live. So I love that. Okay, what else, Lisa? Anything else that was a standout for you?
Well, I don't want to like move it too quickly, but on the other hand, we also know that this time goes so quickly. So I guess it's just continuing with what you guys said, because Emily Freeman, it's Sister Browning uses the same words you just said, where she says, talking about the Israelites. I love that she pointed to the Old Testament, because we're in it. And someone even mentioned here about Hosea this week. Yes, like there are tons of pieces connecting from our Come Follow Me this week, from this talk, from the one Tana sent us that I think is in the Liahona this month, from President Nelson, about where he mentions Hesed, and he says, with covenant people like you have this, or have access to special love and mercy. And that's been just cycling in my head all week of like, I have access to special love and mercy, like extra love and mercy. So I want to like explore how I might access, use, appreciate that. But she says, pointing to the Israelites with the Law of Moses, designed to get ready for a higher covenant relationship with God through Jesus Christ. This is very plainly and accurately stated there. So I love that, because we are looking at the Israelites, and then when we've even come to Alma, and I'm like, okay, there's the Israelites who had, like, it was set up just for what they needed, and then we see how this has maybe gone wrong, or why this has gone wrong. When, if we come back to Hosea, sorry not to be everywhere, but when we are doing the things but we have lost what's behind it. So that made me think of when she says the Israelites had lost sight of Christ in their observances. I made a note of like, we can't lose Jesus Christ in our spirituality. So whatever it is we're doing, if he's not really in that, it has no power. Like, it has no truth. It has no power. it's not getting us back anywhere. So it's really this, then do we look at, but then we come to Alma and it's like, okay, that's how we do it right. People who have faith and are going, I know that this is what I'm supposed to do right now, and it's going to lead me to something else. So I look at that as, I think we all have to kind of be careful, because I'm all for laws and practices. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But are we making them check boxes instead of focusing on the relationship?
That's so good. And did you love that one line where it said, let's see, I'm going to start, the law of Moses was given is the paragraph where I'm starting in. So it's 2 down from where we've been. Mm-hmm. I like it when he says the law, rich with symbolism, pointing believers to look forward to the coming and atonement of Jesus Christ, was meant to help the people of Israel focus on the Savior by practicing faith in him. And I wrote down this in my margin: focus by practice. Don't you think that's so interesting, that it is the practice that allows us to focus? And when we think about, like, what are those spiritual tools? What is my tool? Some of those things are the things that I practice every day. It's prayer, it's scripture, it's actually waking up and going to church on Sunday. There are things that I practice every week. But I love that those, like you were talking about, Lisa, could either be a checklist, or they could be a relationship builder. And how am I engaging in those things? It made me think, which I loved that part. Anything else you want to say about that, either of you?
I just love the visual of a toolkit or the tool belt in that mindset. Like, because when I taught school back in the day, that was one thing that a professor would try to teach. It was like, we're just trying to fill your tool belt, because in the moment, you're never there's never the right answer when you're in front of a classroom of 6th graders trying to move something along. It was like, you might need the screwdriver in this moment. You might need the hammer. You might need, like, who knows what you're going to need in that situation. Yeah. And I love in that she teaches us of the tools in that paragraph we were in a lot of, as covenant children of God, and lists so many of those tools of, like, what do you need in this moment? Like, is this a temple moment? Is this a prayer moment? Is this a talk to a friend moment? Is this a talk to your Chris moment? Is this a journal moment? Is this what is the tool that you need in this moment to move that relationship forward, to have that, to practice that focus? I think also sometimes in this focus, I think there's also the spaces I love during COVID when people would talk about just going to sit in the temple parking lot. And I just think sometimes there's those moments of, like, I need to be numb. I need to be healthily numb, because sometimes the pain or the emotions or whatever are overwhelming enough. Like, I think I loved your comment earlier, and when you said I'm a doer. And so the reminder to see and pause and then do. But I think sometimes for me, even there's moments when the emotions are a lot that I don't even know how to navigate that. And I need to find a healthy numbing for a minute. Yes. and be okay to, and then I'll get into the tools and stuff. But sometimes there's jarring enough moments that it's like, ugh, how do I just be still enough to then I'll be able to see, and then I'll be able to do. And that's, I think, for me, realizing that there's grace in that of, like, I don't instantly have to solve the problem to get to the temple, like that doesn't always have to be the instant answer. But that those filtered glasses can remind us of what and where.
Yes, I love that so much. And I want to think about, so many people in the comments are talking about this word hesed, which is actually one of my favorite words in the entire world. And I don't know if you two have ever heard that word before. It's a word I just fell in love with, just barely, this past April. And it's because I was on this trip in Israel, and we were walking to Bethesda. We say Bethesda, and we were walking down there, and I was with my Israeli guide, and he called it Bethesda. And I was like, wait a minute, why are you saying it like that? And he was like, well, the same way that Bethlehem is really Bethlehem. Have you heard people talk about that before? And Bet means house of, and Lehem means bread. So Bethlehem means the house of bread. And so Bethesda, Hesda, he told me, means grace. And so we were walking to the house of grace. Well, everybody knows I am such a big fan of grace, but I'm walking with a Jewish
You
man.
are? Who knew?
I am, everybody. I'm walking with a Jewish man. So then I was like, teach me what you believe about grace, because I'm super interested in that. Because generally when I come from a space of talking about grace, I think about the cross. I think about Jesus. I think about the atonement of Jesus Christ, which obviously is not where a Jewish person would be coming from. And so then I was like, could you just teach me what you believe about grace? That's what I want to know. And so he started talking about what other people were talking about earlier in the comments, this idea of, he called it action on the ground, which I love. But it's kindness. It's a high kindness. That's what you want to be thinking about. We might use the word charity to describe Hesed. It would be this covenant kindness that allows you to live out what you know about grace. So because I have experienced grace in my life, because Jesus has shown up in my life and given me strength, or helped with my weakness, or overcome things that I needed help overcoming, because I've experienced that covenant kindness, I would be able to also give covenant kindness to someone else. And so I love it. Some of you were talking about, President Nelson talked about it during a talk on marriage, right? Because it's covenant. It would be covenant kindness. But I also love when you think about the story that happened in Bethesda. So I want you to just watch one thing that happens here, because there is in Jerusalem by the sheep market, I'm in John 5, chapter 2, a pool which in the Hebrew tongue is called Bethesda or Bethesda. And I love that. Do you remember how many steps there are, or how many porches there are? 5. And 5 is the number that symbolizes grace. So you love that you're seeing it over and over. There's going to be this explanation of Hesda, right? It's in the name. Hesed, Hesda, same thing. It's in the name, but it's also in the 5 porches. And what's going to happen is there's the man who has laid there for all of those years, and all he wants in his life is to be made whole. That's all he wants. And it's so interesting because Jesus comes to him and he says to him, what are you waiting for? And then he says this in verse 6, will you be made whole? He says to him, like, will you? And I love that thought of like, will I be made whole? And so he says to Jesus, I am no man when the water is troubled to put me in the pool, but as soon as I'm coming, someone else steps down there before me. And this is what I love about this in relation to today. His focus was on the water. And his focus had been on the water for 38 years. His focus had been on the water. He knew he wanted healing the whole time. The whole 38 years, he knew he wanted healing. But in that moment, Jesus is going to change his focus. It's going to be that eyes wide open moment for him. It's going to teach him, where does he need to look? Jesus says to him, rise, take up your bed and walk. And immediately the man was made whole. Right after 38 years, immediately this man is made whole. And everybody gets mad because Jesus heals him on the Sabbath. And like every time I read the story, I'm like, isn't that the best work to be done on the Sabbath?
On the Sabbath.
Making someone whole. Isn't that what we all long for? And so they say to the man, who told you you could carry your bed around? And he says, he that made me whole, he tells him. Now it's super interesting because that word whole is used 5 times also in this story, which I love because 5 is the symbol of grace. Up until verse 15, this will be the 6th time that it's said, but within the story, 5 times it is mentioned. And then I love that the narrator, the man writing the story, the author of the book, whoever wants us to see this story, says this in verse 15. It was Jesus which had made him whole. Like, in case we didn't get it when we went through the story, he's like, I just want to make sure. I told you about the 5 porches. I told you about Bethesda. I told you about where his focus was. But in case you did not get it in the story, it was Jesus which had made him whole. And I love thinking about that when we think about Sister Browning's talk. Because did you love the quote that she says 3 times in there over and over again, which was, now I need to find one of them, but if we see it's through and more. Do you know the quote I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That if
It's the Savior invites us to see our lives through him in order to see more of him in our lives. That one.
That's it. And that is what I love, is that he's inviting us to see through him. That's what happened for the man in Bethesda, is when he turned to look at his life through Jesus Christ, he experienced more of Jesus Christ. And that's when wholeness came. And I think the same is true for my friend Chris that we talked about earlier. Because she saw through Jesus Christ, right? This became her means of seeing through Jesus Christ. Then she was able to bring more of Jesus Christ into our life. And the same as that man there. And what I love about adding the Bethesda part that I wouldn't have thought about originally is there is something about turning that focus back to Jesus, just like Sister Browning is telling us to view things through Jesus and what he's doing. That is going to allow us to first see and then do afterward. And I love the thought about that. Okay, people are talking about this article in the October Liahona where President Nelson is talking about Hesed and covenant relationships. And I talked to a friend of mine who works up at the church lately, who said this talk is one of the most important talks we could read right now in our life. So I'm going to link to it so that you'll be able to find it. But I love that thought of Hesed being a type of grace that leads us to action on the ground. The grace book that I've been working on, and that's what I have been studying. You know that I love first the grace that helps us overcome, saving grace. It's that grace that heals wounds. And then we'll talk about a second grace, which is an exalting grace. It's that grace that transforms us. It helps us to become. In the third book, I'm actually going to teach about Hesed. I'm going to teach about covenant grace. It's the grace that causes us to do something. It's what actually leads us to live in charity, is that third grace. And so I am so interested in that word, in hesed, and learning what that looks like in a life. So that's just some thoughts that we can think about today as we think about Sister Browning's talk, and maybe where our focus is, and what we're choosing to do because of what we see through him. I think is such a good thought. Anything you guys want to add as we close?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Just simply that I think this just all connects to that talk from President Nelson and things he's always been asking us. When I was talking about this when we were just doing Come Follow Me last night to my kids, of asking him, because Emily, you posted about this too, of like, why do I do this and why do I do that? And I asked them those questions. And, you know, my one son says, well, to get back to him. And I said, yes, but it's also, in the end, him. It's all about him, because
that's so good.
She quotes Elder Ballard and saying, in a sense, the sacrifice changed from the offering to the offerer. And then comes down to, when we fix our sight on Jesus Christ, we recognize and we understand that he is the only source and way to receive forgiveness, redemption, even unto eternal life and salvation. So the whole point then, jumping down, is we're demonstrating understanding that Jesus Christ is the only source of power. So I take that the other sources out there in our world don't have power. They don't have redemption. They don't have peace. The other sources aren't going to have it. And this is why, whether, you know, through covenant, he's asking us to come to him. It's the only source. So I do agree that President Nelson's talk, it was the everlasting covenant, that talk is like the most important thing, because it connects all of that. It's about this relationship and the complete focus on him. So anyways, a lot
of people are talking about Sherry Dew's talk that she recently gave, which also was so good. I will link today to Sherry Dew and to President Nelson, so you can find both of those easily and study those this week. Yeah, it's Prophecy Around Corners is Sherry Dew's, and it was. Have you both listened to that already?
I haven't yet.
Oh,
when I finished those, I'm like,
yeah, you are gonna die over it.
So
it's
good.
I'm so
good.
excited.
And like within the first 5 minutes, you are like hooked in that one. And then I will also link to President Nelson's. And
well, in President Nelson's, the very bottom, it says that he shared it in General Conference leadership, which I think is a really powerful. It was new to me that so many of the leaders gathered together during General Conference for their own almost mini retreat of like figuring out what are they focusing on and as they speak. And rarely is that something like they use those channels to teach for the next state conferences and whatever. And so rarely are those messages given to all of us, because they use those that are called to be the mouthpieces for it. And for it to be very clear and direct from that type of an environment to now come to us is so beautiful.
Yeah, I am super excited about it. The person who I was talking to was telling me they had actually heard the talk in that meeting, and said the fact that it is in the Liahona for it's all huge. Of us to have access to is actually like a really big deal. So that will be such a fun talk to listen to. And then let me just say this before we end. Next Wednesday night is our Grace Fireside. I am checking to make sure I'm going to have good internet that night. If by chance I'm not going to have good internet, I'm going to pre-record and I will put it up at 8:30, which is what time we start. If my internet's going to be fine, I will just be on here live. But next Wednesday is our Grace Fireside. So I'll see you Wednesday. Then I'll see you again on Thursday. And now I'll text Grace and say, someone scary wants to be you today. And help her get that.
But this was good. It was good practice. To your practice point, you love that word. It was a good practice of focusing, guys. We nailed it.
And now you guys are going to pray for Grace that we can get that whole thing figured out, because sometimes it is so hard to figure that out. But everyone, an extra prayer for Grace today.
Okay.
She'll love it. Okay. Love you guys.
Love you. Good to see you guys.